Welcome back to the Kudlow Report. The price of war. President Obama will address the nation on Iraq in just a few moments. And as the president marks the end of U.S. combat mission in Iraq, important questions still remain. Was the surge successful? Does nation building work? And at what cost? Let's bring in two distinguished guests. Larry Korb at the Center for American Progress, and he was former Assistant Secretary of Defense in the Reagan administration. Frank Gaffney, the Center for Security Policy, a former Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security under President Reagan. Gentlemen, welcome. Frank Gaffney, start with you. To know if you saw Dave Brooks's piece in the New York Times. He said basically the economy in Iraq is doing well, oil production back to pre-war levels, violence way down, new political and legal structures and institutions. Frank, did the surge work?
Yeah, I think it did up to a point. We're seeing it now playing out as an incomplete success, and I worry very profoundly that what President Obama is doing by adhering to this program of withdrawing on the basis of campaign promises, not on the basis of conditions on the ground, that he may be imperiling the entire enterprise. Not only the hopeful signs that you've just mentioned, Larry, but the considerable investment we've made in lives and treasure over many years. And just on this question of the cost of war, may I just say, we are paying the cost of war because of the kinds of policies we've pursued in the past, where we have neglected our global responsibilities, we've cut our defense spending, and we have wound up inviting aggression from people that I think we could have either deterred or defeated at a fraction of the cost of what it's entailed. We're about to repeat that mistake, I fear, and the cost of the next war will make this one pale by comparison.
Well, Larry Korb, is there a risk here of pulling out prematurely not only the combat troops, but there's a deadline next year to pull out all the other troops, the support troops? Will that endanger the mission? Might that play into Iran's hands?
Well, let me say a couple of things. First of all, this is not Obama's idea. Bush agreed before he left office that we'd be out completely by the end of 2011. The other thing that Bush agreed on was that all of our forces would leave the cities and towns in June 2009. We haven't been doing anything for the last year in terms of any combat missions. So this whole thing about this is Obama is nonsense. It's the Iraqis. When we left the cities in June 2009, Prime Minister Maliki said we repelled the invaders. He declared it a national holiday. Today, he supported the end of the combat mission. So this idea that somehow or another, you know, this is us. Remember, the Iraqis didn't want us. We thought we'd be greeted as liberators. Now, in terms of spending, let me terms of spending here. I think you got a couple of things. Even in real terms, if you control for inflation, we are spending more on defense now than we did at the height of Korea and in Vietnam. This is the first significant conflict we've ever fought in our history where we not only didn't have the draft, which would have held down manpower costs and stopped us from abusing the troops by deploying them too rapidly. The other thing is we didn't raise taxes. Every other significant conflict we've been to, we had a surtax to pay for the war so the Americans would feel part of it and recognize, you know, that they had a stake in this. Not only did we not raise them, we cut them.
All right, hang on. Frank Gaffney, just one quick point. Yes, it was Bush's agreement. Mitch McConnell, Senator McConnell, and other Republicans have said this afternoon that George W. Bush deserves enormous credit for the surge, and that Obama himself opposed the surge in 07 and during the campaign in 08. Frank, do you have a thought on that?
Well, there's no question about it. It's a matter of record. George Bush did do a heroic, I think, courageous and risky thing by doubling down, putting more troops in. It made possible the successes that we've just been talking about, but they're incomplete. And I think George Bush would have been the first to say, look, if the job is not done, if it doesn't make sense for us to withdraw, we're not going to do so on the basis of an arbitrary deadline. And what do we expect the Iraqis to say as we're disengaging? They're going to try to make it sound as though they've succeeded, they've won, they've filled the vacuum, because others will certainly do so if the government of Iraq doesn't, notably the Iranians, as you suggested in your earlier question.
All right, I got to leave it there, gentlemen. We're a little cut off tonight. Larry Korb, thank you very much. Frank Gaffney, that's it for the Kudlow Report.